Hello and welcome to our series of podcasts brought to you by Business Kirklees and the Kirklees Top 100 initiative. We can't wait for you to hear about the rich history of businesses in our region, their heritage, innovation, research, development and growth. Kirklees has a diverse industry base and its central location means it's a great place to live and work with fantastic transport links to key cities and networks across the UK. In this series, we highlight businesses and celebrate the positive impact their success stories have on the great people, places and communities of Kirklees. Hello and welcome to the Kirklees Top 100 podcast. I'm here today with a wonderful guest. It's Alan Williams, who is the CEO of Camira Fabrics. Hello, Alan.
Hi, Ellie.
Thanks for joining me today.
You're welcome.
We've had a quick chat before, haven't we?
Yeah,
we've had a quick chat. So I was intrigued to find out all things Camira Fabrics. So could you just give us a little bit of an introduction of yourself, really, what your background is and what your position is at Camira?
Yeah, as you said, I'm CEO of Camira. Originally, I studied mechanical and manufacturing engineering at university, and I went to make television screens for Philips. Then I moved on to glass fibre tissue at Owens Corning in Cleckheaton, and then ended up at Camira, which at that point was Interface, which was a big American corporation, which we separated from in 2006 via a management buyout.
Ah, right. So quite different industries that you've been
Absolutely.
in prior to this. So what brought you here to Camira then?
I think it was a manufacturing base that I really liked. It was a different challenge. It was textiles, which I guess is great in this area, which is the area I was brought up in and I went to school in. So very interesting for me to get into that. And such a great business as Interface at the time. Yeah. The management buyout was fascinating to begin to control our own destiny.
Yeah.
And we can trace our roots back 50 years, so back to Camira Fabrics, formed by David Hill on Camborne Drive 50 years ago.
Oh, right. So that's where the Camborne came from.
It did. So if you look at the name Camira, of course, the Cam comes from Camborne, from Camborne Fabrics. And then it was a new era for us in 2006 with the management buyout. So clearly we couldn't have ERA as era. So we had Camira IRA. So that's how the name came about.
The name was born then. So that was back in 2006.
It was, yeah.
So how long have you been there now then?
I've been there 20 years and enjoyed many different challenges over the years, whether it's acquiring different competitors or suppliers in the operations side of the business for the majority of my career. 2.5 years ago, ascending to CEO.
Oh my goodness. Daunting? But exciting.
A little bit. Exciting, definitely. Challenging, definitely. But really enjoyable as well. It's very rewarding. And a great new challenge for me after 17 years running the operations for the business. Yeah,
you said it was a possibility maybe years prior to that, but you didn't feel that it was the right time for you. But
I think from a family perspective, sometimes you've got to pick the right time. And, and now is definitely the right time.
Fantastic. So tell us a little bit about Camira Fabrics, what they do, who they are, for those of our viewers that don't know.
Okay, so Camira Fabrics designs and manufactures textiles for the office furniture industry, education uses, and also trains, buses, coaches, and all of the London Underground. So all of the fabric you see in those applications, many of that is ours. All of the fabric on the London Underground is ours.
Yes, huge amounts of fabric then I know I spent my 20s in London, so I was on the Underground every single day, and so all of the fabric on those seats, that's lots of bums on seats, isn't it?
Yeah, so I guess what we say is in the UK, quite often people sit on our fabric without realising, and that can be most days in some cases.
Yes, incredible. So transport is a huge industry for you. That's where... Yeah,
about 25% of the sales we make are into the transport industry globally. So we're selling out in the US, Australia, and around Europe, and of course in the UK as well.
Gosh, and so how much are you selling to the UK out of...
If you look at our business in total, probably about 30% of our turnover goes into the UK. So the majority of what we do is exported to around about 75 countries around the world.
75 countries. Can you list them all? I'm kidding. Don't worry, I won't make you list them all. But that's incredible, isn't it? Huge business. I mean, to be exporting to all of those countries. Is it the same fabrics? Do they all require the same things, or is it different?
If you look at fabric requirements around the world, I guess colour requirements can be different in different parts of the world. Scandinavia, Germany, the US, UK, all have slightly different trends going on.
Interesting.
And I think if you look at different parts of the world, so if you look at California, for example, the flame retardancy requirements there can be quite different in that they don't like chemicals to gain that flame retardancy compared to the rest of the world. So different areas require different flame retardancy standards as well. So it can be challenging making one product and trying to make it fit a global audience.
Yes, yeah, that is really interesting. So you were saying all of those industries, but you're going to have, or you're having a big push or moving into a new industry as well in hospitality.
That's right. So a growth area for us is hospitality. Our fabric is suitable in that area and on occasions has been bought by people and used in that area, perhaps without us knowing. Quite often small orders that are going out to different customers, we don't know where it's going to end up. So be on furniture somewhere in a hotel somewhere around the world. So yeah, it's a great new area for us to work on. If you look at certainly the transportation part of our business, transportation fabric, that's all come back very nicely after COVID and is now at the same level in terms of orders as pre-2019.
Interesting.
Whereas if you look at the office furniture industry, that's certainly still challenged with people working on a hybrid basis, some working from home, so perhaps less requirement to refurbish those offices on quite such a
It's
regular...
incredible, to hear how something affects in so many different ways, isn't it? Such as COVID, that you wouldn't think of it affecting that maybe, but supplying office, fabric for office furniture, but now you can move into hospitality. But we also had this discussion, didn't we? Because it's coming back. People are going back to the office
slowly,
a lot more.
people are coming back into the office, so it will recover as transport has. We're certain that will happen. It's just perhaps a bit slower than we would like.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So what makes your fabrics, I guess, different or special? Or
well, from a customer perspective, I think the sustainable angle of our fabrics is very important, and also the service we provide. So touching on service first, if you're in the UK and you order from us today, we'll deliver tomorrow morning down to a metre of fabric anywhere in the UK, which is something that most people can't compete with. So that's very important to our customer base. But the sustainability is also very important, and we've worked on that over many years. So we can trace back to the 90s when we were ripping army jumpers back to fibre, blending it with new wool and making fabric at that point. I think we were ahead of our times then, and perhaps too early for the customer base to actually accept and understand what we were doing in terms of the circularity. But that's become very relevant recently. We invested in a company called Inuio, which stands for It Is Never Over Until It Is Over. We did that about 2.5 years ago now. We set that up at one of our sites in Birkby in Huddersfield. So we rip yarn and fabric back to fibre, blend it with new wool, and actually turn that into a new fibre, then weave it at our site in Meltham and finish it at our site in Home Firth. So it's a completely brilliant way of recycling waste rather than putting it into landfill. So,
like you say, doing that in the late 90s seems way ahead of when most companies will have even thought about that. And so you've had that 20 odd years of, I guess, experience and learning and growth to see where you're at now. So it keeps you ahead of the game, really, doesn't it?
That's right. It's still new to us, and it's new to the people that are in the business at the moment. But it's fantastic to work with people who have that skill already. So we're adapting to that skill into our operations and also learning it for the next generations. But we've managed to get to the point where very quickly after the investment in that business, we launched a product called Revolution, which had 31% recycled content. And very soon we'll be launching a product called Rescue, which has 75% recycled content. The remaining 25% will be flax, so a natural fibre, so a fantastic story all around. And
it really is. I mean, that sounds amazing. And I think to those younger generations, sustainability is so important now. So to hear that something like that, that's 100%, right?
Well, with a natural fibre, you could argue that. So, as you say, a fantastic story, both for big corporates and also for the younger generation. It's not only the younger generation, but the younger generation are favouring
they're a lot more aware
products.
of it than I guess we were at their age, you know.
Absolutely. And then if you move on, you can look at other products. So we've been using polyester made from recycled plastic bottles since the early 2000s in our fabrics. So we've been using recycled polyester for that many years. So we've always been ahead of our game, leading the field in that. That goes right back to Ray Anderson, who was part of Interface Fabrics and his vision. He drove us down that route, and in the 90s we were very early adopters of ISO 14001 at our manufacturing plants. But as you go on, we've been using some of our waste from the looms and taking that's polyester waste, taking it back to our supplier and recycling that into product now for 14 or 15 years. So
wow.
We're always driving that change. That's a product called X2, which we're just relaunching in the next few weeks. And that'll be up to 30% recycled content. And we're actually taking textile waste and bringing that back through. So instead of putting waste into landfill, we're actually bringing it back in new products and reusing it. So a fantastic story for the environment.
Yeah, it really is fantastic. And what's Sequel? I've read something about that on your website.
Sequel, another great product, another environmental product, and that uses plastic waste recovered from the sea, which is then recycled into polyester yarn and made into fabric. So we have 2 products, Oceanic and Quest, made from that product. And those are lovely products that we launched over the past 2 or 3 years. Really, really well received by the customer base.
So all your manufacturing takes place here in Kirklees?
Not all of it, but a lot of it. So if you look at what we have locally, we have our head office in Murfield, and then we have a yarn spinning plant, which used to be Stork Brothers, now called Camira Yarns. That's in Birkby. So we bought that probably about 10 years ago.
Right.
And that was a supplier that was struggling, so we bought them to make sure we continued that textile skill in the area. So we make woolen yarns there.
Fantastic.
We also have our main weaving and warehouse site at Meltham.
Right.
That employs around about 170 people. We also have Homefirth Dyers, which we acquired probably about 5 or 6 years ago now. So that's a dye house that dyes fabric in Homefirth.
Yes.
We also set up a joint venture yarn dye house, Park Valley Dyers. That's in Lockwood.
Right.
So that's what we have in the local area.
Yeah.
Then in addition, we have a knitting plant in Nottingham and a big manufacturing site that we set up in 2006 in Lithuania. That does most of the weaving for the transport fabrics.
Yeah.
Although we do the finishing and the inspection locally here in Huddersfield. So
I asked the silly question, didn't I, earlier, of why don't you just do it all in one place? So many different sites everywhere. But explain to me what you said there, because it actually wasn't a silly question in the end, was it?
Not at all. And much of this is about where those businesses started. I've mentioned we acquired them. If you look at Camira Yarns in Birkby, we have a fantastic workforce, many of whom are located within walking distance of the plant there in Birkby.
Yes.
So I think if we were to move them somewhere else in Huddersfield or Kirklees, they probably wouldn't be too happy. But as I say, a great skilled workforce that isn't easy to come by, so important for us to maintain that continuity.
Yeah,
if you look at a plant like Homefirth Dyers, we actually use water from 2 ponds up behind the dye house there, and the water content and quality is very important to us in terms of the processing. So it once again would be not impossible but difficult to move that. So that's why those are there.
And fantastic that's what our area is providing as well, and that's why textiles is so huge here, isn't it?
Yeah, it's still a really good textile background in this area, and therefore the support industries are around that as well.
Yeah, amazing. So can you tell me a little bit about innovation?
Yeah, innovation really important. As we look at innovation, we look at how do we innovate with natural fibres and wool. As I've said, we've made products such as Sting, which was the first one, which was wool and nettle mixed together. Yeah. Interestingly, that product...
Love the name.
That product was really well received in the market. That was a product that was inherently flame retardant without the use of chemicals, which was very, very interesting to many of our customers.
Yeah.
Particularly
Californians.
And then that went on to look at other products like jute, hemp, and also flax, which is probably the one we focus on mixing with wool at the moment. Yeah. And we've got quite a few products that we've launched recently and also to come out in the next year or so. So those are the areas that we've probably focused on strongly and been able to focus on because of our acquisition of Stork Brothers, which is now Camira Yarns, so we can make that yarn ourselves. Yeah.
And you work quite closely with Huddersfield University, is that right?
That's right, yeah. We work with the university. We're celebrating 50 years anniversary this year. Camborne started in 1974, so we've had a competition recently with students from the university to celebrate our 50th anniversary. Yeah. But we also work very closely with the textile department there to develop and innovate in flame retardant chemistry So that's very important to us.
So their research and development. So can you tell me a little bit about the Textile Centre of Excellence?
So the Textile Centre of Excellence has been around, I'm not sure, but it's got to be 40 plus years.
Right.
So that's supported the industry. There's many members, so I think there's over 100 member companies, most of whom are textile companies in this area. And the Textile Centre of Excellence supports all of those companies with training and also some big projects, some of which are European funded.
Amazing.
So much of the training is on an apprenticeship basis.
Yeah.
So we train many apprentices for the textile industry specifically.
Yeah.
And we're one of the only accredited places in the UK that can do that.
Wow.
In addition, we do management training there. We
Yeah.
also do fork truck training and health and safety training, all of which are to a great standard and support many of the local businesses, not just the textile industry.
Oh, fantastic. So what's your part in that?
So I've been on the board of directors there, representing Camira Fabrics, I think for maybe the past 6 or 7 years. And
Yes.
very recently I've moved into the role of chairman, supporting the MD of the Textile Centre of Excellence.
Yes. Amazing. You're so modest. You were like, we don't need to. You're the chairman. Wow, that's fantastic. So you've worked together with also Kirklees, haven't you? You have a growth manager there.
Yeah, we work with Tracy very closely and she supports us strongly. One of our recent one of the recent pieces of support that they did was they helped us with our new e-commerce site. So there was a grant that they provided to help us with that.
Yeah.
That's been very successful. So that's, if you like, bringing jobs to the local area because we're selling a few tens of £1,000s a month of fabric online. Interestingly, recently we've been noting that we've even achieved some sales in South Africa and in Brazil. So our fabric's getting all the way around the world via e-commerce.
Yeah.
And much of that's going into applications that we probably wouldn't have sold into before. Much of it's going into acoustics and perhaps more home cinemas, that type of application. So.
But like you said before, you don't necessarily know where, what they're doing with the fabrics when they get the fabrics.
That's right. Sometimes you can tell by the company name. If it's, for example, home cinema installation services, you would guess it's probably going to home cinemas, but it can be quite difficult. But we also sell fabric in China into luggage manufacturers making handbags and suitcases and rucksacks.
Wow.
And also drone manufacturers making bags for the drones. So sometimes our fabric goes into applications you wouldn't normally expect.
Yeah, that you wouldn't necessarily think about. And it's really interesting. The e-commerce side as well is not necessarily an area you thought you were going to see huge growth, but there's definitely potential there, isn't there?
I think we were sceptical, but actually it's been fantastic for us. And you learn a lot about new customers. You've got some great data to work with as well.
Yes,
And the sales are very efficient because, of course, the orders come into our system and they're all there already rather than us needing people to process those orders. So actually a very efficient way of doing business.
It's all sort of done for you, isn't it?
Yeah. And many people like to shop that way these days. Quite often people don't want to talk to people. They just want to process it themselves. So.
It's so true because it's so much easier, isn't it? Yeah, I know. It's so much easier to just go online and order something. So like I said, I ordered something last week, but it didn't arrive the next day like your fabric would have. Well, it still hasn't arrived, actually. That was a week ago. So there was one other thing. So in terms of the innovation as well, there was something to do with digital printing, wasn't there? And you showed us some photographs, I know,
That's
when we
right.
were having a chat earlier. Tell me about that.
So we invested 2 to 3 years ago in digital printing on wool and wool nylon products.
Yes.
And we did this principally for the transport fabric for trains, buses, coaches and the London Underground. So we can print any picture that people want. So we've done advertising for the Tour de France in the Dunkirk region of France, which was fantastic advertising for us. Yeah. We've actually produced fabric for Google headquarters, their training room in New York City. That was almost a bespoke wallpaper that we've done. We've also recently launched a range called Pattern Maker with a designer that's helped us design a range of products that we can sell into the industry very quickly. But we can also do bespoke printing, and we're also looking at some of the editors market, which may take us more into hospitality and also maybe into residential. So we've got a great capability there. You could, if you wish, find a photograph and we could pretty much print that onto fabric for you.
Amazing. So what does the future hold then for Camira?
Well, we're looking at growth, particularly in the hospitality area. We're convinced that the commercial sector, the office market and the education will come back. Certainly the education is coming back. So that will come back. It might need a little bit longer, hence the push into hospitality. Yeah. I think from a transport perspective, we're looking at how do we develop that area. Aerospace is an area that we've got an eye on.
Yeah.
Our fabrics would be suitable in that area.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that we've got in store to drive that growth. E-commerce will continue to do very well for us.
Yeah.
And we'll continue to invest in our business and our people around the world and make sure we are very successful.
Amazing, absolutely fascinating. It's been wonderful to hear your story and hear about the incredible business that you've got here in Kirklees, especially being part of the Kirklees Top 100 as well. So thank you for joining me today, Alan.
Yeah,
Thank
brilliant.
you.
Thank you.